This is the Ed Non-Tech Podcast, conversations about education, technology, and culture with Dr. Doug Reed and Dr. Matt Stranick. Thank you for joining us.
My name is Dr. Doug Reed, and I am located on Abagway, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people.
My name is Matthew Stranick, and I'm in Kamloops, British Columbia, on the traditional lands of Tk'emlúp-te-Secwépemc within Secwépemc-Ulu, the traditional and unceded territory of the Secwépemc people. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 21 of the Ed Non-Tech Podcast. As ever, I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Matt Stranick, and joined with me from the East Coast, perhaps the better coast. Whoa, controversy there. We got Dr. Doug.
Hey, everybody. Sometimes I think the West Coast is the best coast, but it rhymes better.
There's things about it that I will give you this, and I've been here for 5 years. I've been telling people now, like, how long? People ask, like, how long have you been in Kamloops? And I'm like, I kind of have to step back and go, 5 years, 5 years and a couple of months. So this is like, for me, besides Fredericton and Qatar, this is like the longest I've lived anywhere, actually, in my adult life. So my feeling is the awesome things about the West are indeed truly awesome, but there's some very significant quality of life factors that can potentially, pull you down or pull other people down. East Coast is like that. Everywhere's like that. At this point, I'm just meandering. But how's it been going, man?
Not too bad. Okay. I don't have any real complaints.
How about imaginary complaints? Do you have any of those?
Oh, I have a laundry list of those. I have plenty of those, but my life is pretty good right now. I have nothing to really complain about.
Any problems are so-called first world problems, am I right?
Oh yeah. That's all they are. Like, I need a new roof. I need to redo the shingles on my house. That is definitely a first world problem.
My first world problem is that I have just enough money in the bank for like a down payment on a house, but not having a job. I'm just like, okay, this is what I got to live on. So I'm exiting the property ownership market, I think. It seems to be what's on the way for me, but that's all ephemeral. That's all the personal beats. Dude, why don't you give me a rundown on what we're talking about this time? Because it seems to me this is a really interesting topic, and I don't want to risk misrepresenting your intention here, bud.
Well, this is part of what I see as our growth plan.
Okay.
Because up until now, we've been talking about concepts.
Yep.
Right. We present a concept and then we blah 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 about it. And
we don't just blah 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 about it, man. I think there's like more to the enterprise than that. I don't think it would be. I don't think it would have sustained itself through 7 months and 21 episodes and a bunch of web stuff were it just the blah blah blah. So I mean, I'm not knocking you for calling it that, but I'm just saying, man, I'm actually at the point where, like, you have a job, right? You have things in your life that are sort of professionally meaningful to you at the moment. I've got this. And it means a lot to me. So
you're right.
This is my perspective, dude.
No, that's a good perspective. You're right. I was being too blasé.
It's okay. But I do appreciate the sentiment here. I do appreciate the thought. And I just
we're jumping into something brand new.
We are.
So instead of a topic and us discussing it and bring the literature in and our various expertise in the various areas, we're looking at a whole journal today. We're looking at a whole set of publications from one journal, and it's the Journal on Centers for Teaching and Learning.
Fantastic.
Volume 14, number 22.
That's dope. And we talked about this. We sort of, we actually, when that publication first came out, right, because I think we can safely say that you and I are friends with at least a couple of the authors. I'm personally friends, I think, with 3 of the authors. Facebook friends, hopefully more than that. Kara and Carolyn and the other Carolyn, if you're listening. Yeah, I mean, I saw, at least 1 or 2 of these people post, a link to the publication, which of course they should do. And I was just, super impressed, by the journal, and then see, just the titles and the abstracts of some of the papers. So I have been notably absent from Kamloops. I've been shifting around. I've been kind of doing other things. So quite frankly, bud, I'll be very interested to check through your notes and sort of see what your commentary is on this, dude.
Yeah, my commentary is going to be different today.
Okay.
Because since we're approaching a new area, yep, I've got it laid out. I tried to keep a similar structure where here's a picture or here's a few comments about the article that I pulled out. And then I have almost a spoiler alert section where it's like, this is the direction I headed. Because I read some of these 2 weeks ago, so I needed to write the notes to give myself notes to do. So it's all totally good, right? It's how dare you have a life, right? That was meant as a joke. I mean, I'm happy you have a life.
Well, I mean, it's just for me, I've just been, I may as well, just since we're sort of still on the general aspects of it here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that I've made a few pretty, I don't know, for me, personally significant decisions over the past, since the last episode. I kind of, I jumped from Kamloops over to Kelowna for, around 5 days while the other episode was kind of in production. And I had the opportunity to hang out with a really cool person who has sort of got me on to the whole vegan tip, right? Not, leading a plant-based kind of life.
Yeah.
And this book here, Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows, has actually been pretty significant to me in terms of my thinking on that. And I guess just sort of in alignment with that, I've also given up a pretty long-standing alcohol habit and a pretty long-standing marijuana habit. So for the first time, I'm just sort of operating without any of that. And, it's not as terrible as I might have thought, quite frankly. So I'm at the point now where I'm kind of ready to take a look at things with a slightly different perspective than I did before. So I'm actually quite glad that this is, this topic is the first, since all of this stuff that I'm kind of trying to run through in my life, right? So.
Yeah, so this is a good serendipity moment then.
Yeah.
Because this is another change that we're trying to approach things in a different way.
Exactly. We're keeping things in flux, we're not resting on our proverbial laurels.
Yeah,
so to speak.
Absolutely.
Okay, man. So I guess to start with then, just kind of going out here.
My first step is I put the link to the journal there. Because for people that didn't happen to be Facebook friends with one or more of the authors, they may not have the link. So there it is. Go take a look. Everything's free to access. You don't need to be connected to any post-secondary or whatever. It's all right there.
Open access is, I think, the future. Can I say that?
I'm hoping it is. I
don't know, man. I realize I've been like away from like a professional setting, as such for it's like we're going on 15 months at this point. And I'm just like, now when I sort of think of things that sort of used to be part of my thing, I kind of feel like I'm reaching back and I'm a little uncertain about it. My sense of, it's like I can do all this self-study, I can sort of tap into things, but in terms of what's going on in universities and colleges, man, I'm on the outside looking in. So again, I kind of appreciate the barrier-free access where I don't have an institutional account to a library or whatever, that this stuff is available to kind of, provide that kind of professional support during this weird transitory period within my career. So again, man, much obliged to bringing this out.
And along those same lines, every single article that we've done in the last 20 episodes is free to access through Google Scholar. Every single one.
That's true. Yeah, no, I mean, you've been the person, sort of bringing
I've
in
been picking mine anyway.
the significant amount of references. And that's awesome, man. It's, I appreciate, I mean, we live in a world where not everything can align with one's values, but to the extent that it's possible, it's certainly worth the effort, in cases like this. So that's a really good intro there, Bud. So just making sure, that'll obviously be in the notes, and I hope people will look at that. So then from there, just the provision of the article or the journal rather, we have you've got this pretty. You grab this you grab this diagram from that first article, did you, Bud? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So here's my plan. I want to lay out what I'm hoping to do.
Please do.
Okay. I read every one of these articles, and I grabbed a chunk out of each one, and I put a comment to guide our conversation for each one, or at least guide my words.
Well, I mean,
it's go through.
It's a prompt, right? It's a prompt to sort of extemporize and sort of extend our thinking about this. So, which will hopefully be of some benefit, to people who are checking this out. So
that's exactly it.
Okay, dope. So,
and I have a bias.
Tell me your bias.
Because of the people that wrote all these articles, I am good friends with one person, and her article was by far my favorite. By far. Even if her name wasn't on it, it would have been my favorite. But knowing
there we go.
Part of it, it's even better.
Well, that's fabulous. And again, it's nice when it's serendipitous. It's sort of a mid or slightly later career thing where suddenly, you go from the outside on your grad study and whatever, and then suddenly, your name's on a few things, and then suddenly your colleagues with some of these people. It's kind of a, it's an interesting aspect of the career is what it is. So, yeah, for sure. Okay, man. So
these are not in the order.
Oh, they're not.
No,
okay.
They're not in the order because I honestly went with the ones that interested me more, and just from the titles.
Sure.
And once I got into them, and then I was like, oh, what's the order? And it's like, forget it. I'm just there's one or two that are out of order.
Okay. So your first sort of chunk, as it were, is from Linz and Hood. Is that correct? That's where the diagram comes.
Building a plan. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to see. You sort of pulled out the rationale for why it was written, and I guess
I love that rationale. That rationale is so good.
It's very first of all, it's in bullet points. And as a former technical writing teacher for a certain number of years, that always warms my heart. Succinct, clear, unambiguous, even potentially so brief as to warrant inclusion in a bulleted list. That's dope.
Yes, and that's the way my brain works too. It's to
yeah. So I guess of the rationale. I guess what would you say resonated with you the most on this one?
It's getting past every time I've first met somebody from a Center for Teaching and Learning, and they say, "Oh, here's some sessions that we do, or here's some stuff that we do," and I'm like, "How are you measuring it? Where's your impact? How many people are coming to your sessions?" That's always where I start, because it's like, I don't care what pie in the sky idea you've got. What impact are you having? And if you have one person and you change their lives, that's fantastic. That's better than 12 people come and sit and come for the donuts. Right? It's
everybody, but people like donuts. I mean, when I did my teaching center time, or even when I had some workshops at TRU, I definitely I wasn't above bringing out the pastries to try and get some people to show up.
Well, so
Not without some success, I might say. But
I don't remember getting pastries when I went to your sessions.
Well, that's because you only went to the one. That's the problem. That's the problem right there, Doug. If you had gone to one more session, I could still be gainfully employed at TRU. That's there. It's all on you. That's what I'm saying.
So I've done you a favor.
You've done me so many favors, man. This is real talk. This is like my sole major source of professional self-efficacy right now. I'm still doing the writing center tutoring. I'm still, doing whatever little things on social media. But man, this just it's really it feels like I'm in the game when I get to do this. So okay, man. Yeah, totally, eh? Right.
So I really like digging in with this article, right? It's like, because sometimes you read an article and you're like, why? Like, are they doing this just to come up with? They had to do something to get a publication this year, or what? And they laid it out, and it was so nice and crisp and clear. And it's like challenging and assigning meanings to data collected. And it was like, yes, we need to do that. I hate when we go do a survey and it's like, how old are you? What's your nationality? And it's like, who cares? Why are you asking me that other than demographic info to try to put into some statistical analysis software?
Well, okay. But again, to be fair, like, I don't know, within my thesis, that was exactly some of the kinds of things that were included in the survey. It wasn't the sole purpose of it. But I mean, again, it's like, it can be helpful to know, for instance, that, say females or males or, people with tenure or people who are pre-tenure, what the tendencies are, right? Because ultimately the statistical analysis, I'm a fan of what's called descriptive statistics, like average, mean, mode, frequency, those kinds of things, because they show trends. They show sort of the life of a subject, or a phenomenon. And it's a more human-centered approach, so I mean, I'm just saying, like, you're right.
So
a lot of this.
You're going to like the Hershock article then. The Hershock, Stimson, Popmeyer, Melville, Harrell, and Weiss.
You're jumping around in the notes, man. That's
I'm telling you, that's the one I left for last because I liked it the least. We don't have to go there. We'll go there when
we're all about the positive mental attitude. Okay, we're going to talk about what we like, and we're going to joke about the stuff we don't like. But honestly, haters, you can check out now, right? Yeah. Okay, just we positive vibes only on this podcast is what we're
after. I can't talk about this. I can't talk about this image then.
Well, okay, so what's wrong with the image? I'm just looking at it. I'm like, okay, teaching and learning center in the square with these sort of little tag things hanging off on the side. So what's an issue with that, bud, for you?
It doesn't feel done. It doesn't feel like it's finished, because it looks like all these things are extras, and they're not. These are all things that are integral, and the way they've got it hanging, it feels like some kind of keychain thing, where all these things.
It looks like a keychain, like the arrows, like on each of the items surrounding the main part of the graphic. That's what it looks like. It's got the arrow, and it looks like it's attached to a thing, right? So
yeah, it looks like there's a piece of thread or a piece of leather or whatever.
Yes.
And for me, I just look at it and it's like, oh, they could have went deeper. They could have talked about the relationships between the courses and the collaboration and the grants and the communities and the workshops and flesh that out more. And maybe that wasn't the point of this article or this image.
Well,
but it could be so much richer.
Well, okay, and again, just to play the devil's advocate, I will. I'm just saying, I like how concise it is as an image. I mean, it's unambiguous. I mean, it does what a graphic is meant to do, in that it represents some amount of complex info in a visual analogy, which is more easily understood than were it written out in a chunk of text. So again, for me, the writing teacher says, it could be better, but still, right?
Right, and I'm wondering what the arrows mean then.
Okay,
like,
so
there's an area, like, let's say teaching and learning centers in the middle, and then it goes to consultations and back. Like, what does that mean? What do the arrows mean? That's the part that confuses me.
Well, I think it's the flow in and flow out. So, for instance, communities help inform the teaching and learning center, and the outputs from the teaching and learning center conversely affect the community. Workshops are, offered by the teaching and learning center, and then participant feedback and other elements sort of feed back into the teaching and learning center. I personally could see this. I personally could see this diagram as like if they wanted to, if we wanted to redo it. Not that we're gonna. Person who wrote this, but like the mother of all Venn diagrams, right? You can have like, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Overlapping things, and then with the teaching and learning center right in the middle. But
because I see the teaching and learning center out bigger, it's surrounding everything.
Subsuming the other endeavors.
All of those.
Okay.
That's just me being a nitpicker today. Like, I love the article. I love where they went and how they organized it.
Well, no, man. Well, that's fantastic. And I mean, I think again, the notion here. I kind of did my typical thing where I kind of grabbed pedagogy of the heart and just kind of flipped through a few pages. And sort of what you're describing here sort of suggests to me that it reminds me of this notion here that, and again, I underline stuff in this all the time. There's something here. Critical consciousness demands action, right? So, and this is something here. Without a vision for tomorrow, hope is impossible. And so when we're involved in the educational endeavor, it's not just, and here's where he sort of distinguishes, Freire distinguishes, his idea of the neoliberal approach as sort of being focused on the delivery of content, and at the expense of being situationally or socially aware. So, again, I think everything exists within a broader social context, and your notion here of having the, having the teaching and learning center as the thing, and then all the other things sort of within that, it maybe perhaps aligns a bit with that notion.
Oh yeah, and it's just my understandings, and I realize I'm not really in depth with all the teaching and learning center research. So
we're not going in depth. That's why we're doing an entire. That's why we're doing the entire issue, right? If we wanted to go in depth, we could probably just spend the whole hour plus, just on the one thing, which we may get around to doing one of these episodes. We might, but yeah, man. So just in terms of this one, was there anything else here that we haven't covered here? Okay.
My favorite phrase in all of these articles was in this one. It was distributed responsibility for visibility. And I love that phrase. It was so good. It was like everybody's responsible. Yeah, it's awesome.
That's like, I don't know, maybe like my next tattoo right there. I got space on my upper arm for that. That's yeah, man, I can get behind that.
That phrase was so great. I just loved the way it rolled off the tongue.
Well, it's nice when it can be elegant as well as descriptive. That's always a sweet thing.
It is, because I'm so rarely elegant, and I appreciate it when things are.
Well, I mean, to say nothing of the elegance in the inelegant, aka Tom Waits, aka lots of very, very valuable art and culture artifacts. Personally, I think, the further away you can get from artifice, the better art you're going to make. But, okay, man.
I'll take that.
I've had aspirations of being a writer. I'm like,
we should do that.
This is consistent with my experience, I think.
Then we should do that.
We shall.
Okay, I like shall is better than should. I'm a big fan of that, so that's good. Anyway, okay, I'm going to the next one. I'm moving on to the next one. It's Carolyn's article. It's Raphael Loy Hostler. Mitro,
Ives. Wow. Okay. I do know the middle authors of this, and I don't know the first and last author. So that 3 out of 5 ain't bad. 3 out of 5 ain't bad. 4 out of 6.
Yeah, and I know 1 out of 5, but she's one of my favorite people in the world. And
dope. Yeah, I know who you mean. She's the best. Yeah. She's literally the best.
The use of narratives. As soon as I read narrative, it was like, I love narratives.
Well, she was an English teacher, right? The person that we're talking about.
Carol.
And her partner, who's awesome too, and has nothing to do with this article, is also an English major at one point. So narrative is just sort of, yeah, man, I can't get enough.
I remember I was talking to Carolyn one time, and I was talking about my struggles with trying to read Ulysses and how proud I was reading Ulysses. She's like, oh, here's the book on how to read it easier, right? I've read it how many times? And it's like, oh, I brought a knife to a gunfight.
You did a Sotal knife to a Sotal, Ulysses. Yeah. Man, I haven't read Ulysses.
Pool noodle, whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Have you read it?
I haven't. I respect it for what it is. But I don't necessarily want to engage with a book in the way that I would say a game of chess or something. I mean, I don't got that many. I don't have that much of an attention span. I hope to find time for it. I've read other of his books. Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man.
Me too.
The short stories. There were. I don't know. Joyce is dope.
I've read all the short stuff. And I've read like Portrait of the Artist and all that, but Ulysses, in one point for 3 pages, I was lost. I was like, what's going on here? And then it's like, I realized he's describing the breakfast that he's cooking for 3 pages. And it's like,
but you got to be conversant with early 20th century or late 1800, Dublin, urban, whatever. I mean, you gotta have that stuff. And it's like, fine, that's all good. Have you tried Finnegan's Wake? Because that's supposed to be a monster.
Is it? No, I haven't tried that one.
Okay, well, that's even more monstrous, I think.
But just to be on the Dublin thing for one more second with Ulysses, I was in Dublin visiting my brother. Yeah, my brother's over in Ireland, so I was in Dublin visiting, and we were in whatever, we were doing whatever, and then there was this plaque on the ground, outside a shop, and I'm like, why is this brass plaque here? And it's because this is the shop that the characters in Ulysses went to get a Gorgonzola sandwich on page whatever. And so they got this tour in Dublin. You could go around to all the places.
And there's a thing I don't know. It's like Bloomsday. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it is. It's Bloomsday.
What do you know when in the calendar that follows? I want to say it's
June. I think it was June the 6th.
There we go. Could well be. So that'd be cool, man. Being in Dublin on Bloomsday sometime, just to kind of, just to participate in that way.
Yeah. So I'm going to apologize because I'm the one that took us to another country.
I'm a willing accomplice, man. But this article, this awesome article.
So this article was my favorite. I loved it before I even realized who wrote it. And when they're talking about the analysis of rich context-driven narratives with multiple voices, and it was like, that's how you get to people. You can't tell one story and have everybody understand it, right? You got to come at things from different ways and different viewpoints to try to get everybody to where you're trying to get them. There were stories about the Buddha. I'm not Buddhist, but I've read about him.
Okay.
And literally, he would have 100 people sitting out in front of him, and he'd say one word, and 90 people would nod their heads and understand and leave. And then he'd say a sentence, and then 9 more people would nod their heads and leave. And then there was the last person, which I think would have been me. And then he talks for 14 hours to try to get them to where the rest of them already are. Wow. And that's what I loved about what was going on in this article, and how to communicate your value and the nature of your work and stuff. Oh my goodness. I just really enjoyed it.
So it could be empowering for other educators who might be interested in reading it and taking such approaches into consideration. Is that the case?
Yeah, yeah. This was, we don't do 2 thumbs up, but it would have been 2 thumbs up if that was a thing that we did.
We'll give it 4. We'll give it 4 thumbs up. Yeah.
Yeah, they explore it so well. Like I really enjoyed this.
So the concepts were there, and it was a pleasure to read.
Yeah, it was very well written. It was nice.
That in itself is something of achievement, because in the world of peer-reviewed academic-ish literature, that is not always the case. Again, that's kind of one thing. That's one thing that kind of grabs me about the free air is that even though I kind of have to plod through it, it's so elegantly written. I mean, just like I picked this up this morning. The first thing I read: hope is an ontological requirement for human beings. Like, wow, that's a good starting point, man. Like, hope is a necessary function of the human condition, and that from an educator standpoint. Is pretty profound, I think. So it's the same kind of thing.
We have different ideas of what hope is.
That's true. Hope
because I think hope is evil.
Oh,
like
okay.
Pandora's box. You know Pandora's box or Pandora's jar, whatever. When all the evils got out.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only evil left in the box was hope. It was the one that didn't get out to ruin the world. And it was only in like the Middle Ages and stuff where the Christian thinkers brought hope out as a good thing. We can have that discussion anytime.
Well, I mean, hope for the future, I think, is the notion there. Yeah. Okay. Well, be it unresolved.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So,
do you have any comments about this?
I don't. Well, I don't. I mean, I've got your notes and I've read, the titles, and that's, all I've really caught up with prior to the recording.
For sure.
Only in as much as your points that you've raised have made it sound, probably even more compelling. And, again, just given the nature of just given, who these people are, given what I'm aware of their backgrounds, I can't exclude that from the experience of reading it, which I haven't done yet, but it'll be the resources will be in the notes, right? So
true enough.
Absolutely.
I just didn't want to steamroll along.
Oh no, man, steamroll away. We're at a half an hour, if you can believe it. So
okay.
Yeah.
So here's okay. I want to jump to the next one, the Lash Russell Morgan article, Power Users and the CTL.
Hallway champion, is that a thing that's from the article, or
no? That's a thing for my life. And since I never worked in a center for teaching and learning, and I know you had roles, did you ever come across hallway champions? Like it's like, oh, you got to work with whoever so and so is the person over there that does all that stuff. Let's get them on.
Well, I mean, so first of all, totally. So like, what you're speaking to kind of reminds me of what I think of when I think of communities of practice. So yeah, so when I consider and when I think really on a community of practice kind of situation, I don't necessarily think of my teaching and learning center experience, although it probably does fit. I think more of my first gig teaching really, at College in North Atlantic. Not my first teaching gig, but my first professional, accredited whatever thing.
Yep.
And in terms of everybody in that environment, like all the educators who were there, were hundreds and thousands of kilometers from where they came from, for the most part. All expats, all working in this institution together, trying to deliver, curriculum, Canadian curriculum, to Arab, Gulf Arab, and other, regional expat students. And by necessity, you have the syllabus, but you don't have, that's kind of taken from Canada. But then the rest of it, you kind of have to improvise and build. And my first sort of ed tech, champion story myself was just using, PBWorks wikis. And I've mentioned this on the show before.
Yeah, yeah.
But that was sort of, to me, that was kind of an instance where, I took something from my educational program that I had just graduated out of, shared it with people who were probably, 5 or 10 or, even more years, ahead of me within their careers. And it really, it wasn't anything that was like mandated. It wasn't anything that was like, directed by the dean or chair. It was just something where I happened, to have tapped into it. And then other people within my department, and then eventually other people within the academic department sort of started making their own use of it. So to me, that was something that was informed by the collaboration of others involved. And it was just sort of like, can you just people like just knock on your door, come in and just like, can you show me this, on your computer here while we're here? And that was one of the, enjoyments that I got from being the lead instructor for a couple of years within that department, just being able to kind of bring in those hallway innovations
Yes.
and use them as a basis to step into, higher forms of e-learning, arguably more mandated forms of e-learning, such as the LMS that they eventually brought in. But yeah, man. So again, the hallway champion resonates with me just because
Because you used to be one.
I wouldn't say that I was one as such. I'll just say that's that's my closest relational point to that. I can
Right.
envision that really clearly,
Right. And what you just described, I would define you as a hallway champion. But that's okay.
I'm a hallway champion who's locked out of the school. And I'm like, yo, why am I locked out of the school? But that's another thing.
That's another whole thing.
That's another thing. Okay, man. So and emergency transition. Oh, ETOL. I've never seen that acronym.
Me neither.
Where did you get that? Did you get that from the article, dude?
Yeah, that's in the article.
No.
So I heard pandemic pivot, right? Or I heard that phrase a lot, but
pandemic pivot, PP. That would be the acronym for that. PP, pandemic pivot, PP. I got a PP. I got a pandemic pivot. Yeah. Okay.
So they came up with a nicer, more academic-ish phrase.
Less urinary. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, less urinary, but good. Some of the stuff that happened was pretty urinary. Like it wasn't
urinary-esque.
Yeah. So we're
dropping into some new terms into the jargon here, folks. That's what's
we definitely are.
Okay.
So this article went in and talked about the power users, the hallway champions, and hallway champions, my term, it's not in the paper.
Power.
Yeah, and people that work in CTLs know them, and people that work in the hallway. It's like, oh, I'll go talk to so and so about that.
Yeah, it's like improvised innovation. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
Right, and part of what they looked at was, do the power users help the workloads of CTLs?
Oh,
and the answer is not really.
They get in the way. Good. They confuse the message. They make things more complicated.
And they know enough to, like, when you're trying to talk to them to explain something, they ask deeper questions, and they'll argue with you more, and they'll say, no, that won't work because. So
it becomes then a matter of potentially entrenched viewpoints.
Yes.
People are so committed to their own innovation or contribution that perhaps they have less perceived use or necessity of, say, a teaching center.
Yes. And there becomes issues with best practice in campus and federal policies, because the power user, the hallway champion, says, this is the way it is. This is what I'm telling people in the hallway. And their colleagues believe them. And it's like, oh, no, that's changed. Educating of those people.
The reason that TRU uses Moodle, as I was given to understand, is because, like, back in the day, I guess at this point, probably 8 years ago, there was one, really high profile power user. Can't remember if he was an open learning person or, a campus-based person. but he just was like, Moodle is the thing, and he just knocked on the doors and just kind of kept pushing it. And then eventually, I mean, I don't know what the resolution point there was. You know, Moodle's just as good as, you know, it's no worse than any of the others. But it eventually became something where, you know, one person and, you know, his immediate, you know, sort of circle of people that he influenced eventually led to a complete, you know, procurement process that affects the learnings, affects the learnings of, you know, everybody who passes through that university. So that's, you know, today it's sort of like today New Brunswick, tomorrow the world. You know, today my little instance of Moodle, tomorrow campus wide. You know,
how is that any different than the American Revolution? Right? They had a bunch of people sign a thing and say we're going to rebel, and then suddenly, like, some of these people were in their 20s. I don't want.
Of course, people didn't live as long. People didn't live as long back then, so your 20s back in the day was more like your 30s today. But still, point taken.
Well, yeah, it's. But this article was really interesting, just because it was. We gotta educate these power users.
Yes, get them to sort of integrate right into the whole, so that there is harmony and consistency and fluency and good natural alignment between the content and the messaging of the various organs of the body education within the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay, I'm jumping to the next one then.
Please do. I'm not helping you at all, man. I'm just like, I didn't read the articles yet. I'm just like, okay, that's okay.
So the Stoats. I think I'm saying that right. Stows. I'm not sure.
Sorry. I thought Losh was the next one, dude. Sorry. No, that is the power users one. Okay.
That is the power users one.
Stoats.
Use Google Analytics to measure engagement. I'm going to apologize to the author because I probably got that wrong.
No, this is dope, man. So
what they did, they based a lot of their stuff on the webpage. They went in and examined the web pages of Centers of Teaching and Learning, and they tried to use metrics to say what's work.
Oh, I see. Yeah. They kind of got their you got the 9 categories listed out there. Yeah. So then they went around to various. Like, how many sites did they visit?
I didn't get a good sense of. I don't remember.
Okay, but that's an interesting notion, right? To sort of. Yeah. To me, that's a worthwhile endeavor, right there.
That's the front door. That's the front door of CTLs or TLCs. Sorry, CTLs. Centers.
Get down with TLC. Yeah, you know me.
But the website is where people go first, right? They're not going to walk to the office or walk to the building.
Well, and in my one of the SOTOL articles that I contributed to when I was at Ontario Tech, and actually I think it was one of the ones with Claudia from the article with Carolyn, we examined the social media outlets of various teaching and learning centers because back in 2015, when I first arrived, social media was still within its first 10 years, right, of, mass, usage. So, we had sort of just wondered, what that looked like. And we didn't necessarily cover it in any great detail or depth, such as might be suggested here. But I get why you would do that, I guess is what I'm saying. It makes all the sense in the world. So,
yeah, it's the new front door. And so I just love the way they did it and what they did. I love that they looked at these 9 different things, and so many of them we can't even see as outsiders, right? We don't know the bounce rate. We don't know how many pages per session that people went to and all that stuff. So it was interesting to get the behind the scenes approach. And then after looking at all these things, basically it was TLCs must continue to monitor. They can't sit on their laurels. They can't say, yeah, we figured it out. TLCs don't get the rest. They have to keep finding new ways to engage and make things work, because we're still about helping students, right? Even though we don't work with the students, we're secondary, right? The students are secondary help. that we
Well, I mean, it all exists within the same continuum, right? I mean, you know, never has there been a cohort of people who needed professional development more than post-secondary educators as a whole, man. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't spent tons of time outside of post-secondary, but that's my gut feeling. And any gains, you know, that are provided through such engagements are, you know, it's a win-win situation. It's just like, if you have an interest in your own professional development at all, then, you know, you're obligated. You're obligated, you know, almost morally and pedagogically obligated to kind of do this stuff.
Yeah, because so many people get hired for their expertise in an area, but they don't know how to teach, right? And so they're going to do what they fall back on how they were taught. And it's like, guess what? Stuff changed from the 70s and 80s and 60s and 90s. Stuff changed. We used to put lead in oil. We know that's bad. We don't do that anymore. We used to use asbestos all over the place. We don't do that anymore, right? Stuff has changed. So
I'm getting some new tattoo ideas on the show, man. I'm like, the new front door, that's going on there too. And then stuff changes. Like,
yeah,
that like aligns with a lot of my lived experience, man. Stuff changes.
Well, change is inevitable. Suffering is optional.
Yes. Gosh dang,
I said
man.
that before, and I'm ripping that off one of the people I worked with at TRU. I don't remember his name right now, but he was enjoyable to work with, right? And he's just like, yeah.
Well, I mean, again, that's not that far removed from the basic tenets of Stoicism. So to me, that's you know, like,
that works well.
It's suffering is only to the extent that, you know, your mind will, you know, allow it to occur. You know, really, which, you know, there's some argument there to be had there, but
absolutely.
Okay, man. So was there anything else from this one that kind of resonated particularly, or?
No, I like the call to arms that said, we did all this stuff, we checked all these things out, we're okay, but we gotta keep looking. We can't rest on our laurels. We have to keep looking to see what other new opportunities are coming out, right? So part of Centers for Teaching and Learning is, like, right now, I assume it's a bunch of AI stuff, because AI has just exploded in the last couple of months.
I was talking with my excellent friend Toba Byron, Dr. Toba Byron from Ontario Tech University. We have like a, you know, monthly Skype call or whatever, and she was telling me, you know, she's one of my favorite people. You know, she's just so awesome. But she was telling me like about how, you know, she went to a faculty meeting within her group like within the past couple weeks, and it was all about GP chat and AI, right?
Yep.
That's what, yeah. And you know, and basically Toba and I sort of, and you know, her husband's works at York, so he's like a soc prof, and you know, the three of us just sort of agreed, you know, amongst ourselves that, you know, it's problematic, but, you know, only to the extent that you're designing assessment that is vulnerable to it. So
yeah,
if you don't want to do things that are not vulnerable to it, then do, you know, check in with the teaching center, you know, or potentially your local hallway champion, potentially, right?
Yeah, but then you have to teach differently than you were taught all those years ago. So what goes around comes around.
See, you know, for me, different is just what I try and do all the time, and
yeah, to
my detriment, I might add. But I can't really think of it any other way. And you know, even when I think of, you know, those didactic kind of methods, the lecture, stand in front of the thing, you know, that I experienced. I mean, I have to admit that there were people, and I talked about this before. I mean, I gave the example of my Irish prof who just, you know, completely was at ease with it and owned that methodology. But then even some people who, you know, were not as advanced at it, you know, it's like you could see that their intentions were there, right, to try and make what they were doing engaging. And I would just say, you know, the scholarship of teaching and learning has moved. The concept even of teaching and learning centers has become a lot more prevalent. I think it's understood now that you can't run a viable post-secondary enterprise without having a robust teaching and learning center. And honestly, I'm that's my pie in the sky, notion right there. But I just think like anything that helps you be more informed and useful at what you do, I mean, how is that, in any way detrimental? And you can't just do, the one and done. It's like, I went to a workshop 6 months ago. It's like, you really, your professional development is only going to pay off to the extent that you are committed to it. Now, I may have professionally developed myself out of the building, but the point remains, you all could be doing well. I actually think people who listen to this would probably be the kind of people who would check in anyway. But
yeah, true enough.
I'm just rambling, man. I've had too much, I've had too much street legal 0.05% craft beer, dude.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
I'm glad that it is.
Now,
the one you don't like. Is this the only one you don't like?
No. It was the one I liked least.
Oh,
it doesn't.
Okay.
I don't like it. Like there's.
Thank you. Positive vibes only.
Yeah.
Positive vibes only. Okay.
And part of it was the title, because I hate the concept of thin slicing, and this is the Hershock, Stimson, Popmeyer, Melville, Harrell.
Yeah. So thin sliced embedded direct assessment. TC.
Yeah.
Wow, that's kind of an unwieldy title. I got to be honest.
So what they did is they came up with a method for how do we assess what we're doing, basically, as a center. And they put these, because they couldn't help themselves, they came up with a 5-letter abbreviation. Right? No, I'm not trying to be mean.
It's endemic, to anybody involved in any aspect of post-secondary. Oh, we got a new thing. Does it have a catchy acronym? No, but now it does.
And I'm guilty of that too, because when we came up with names for this, we ended up with Ed Non-Tech because it spells ENT, and ENT are those really cool creatures.
Well, it's the new front door, okay? Like acronyms are the new front door. It's like if it doesn't pop off the page, then you may as well just discount. It's like how many people even read any individual academic article? I mean, it's like I think the average number would probably be shockingly low.
6
for
to
all.
8.
Yes, thank you. I knew that you had mentioned it at some point.
That's the number that I read last time.
Yeah, so I mean, for all the effort, all the human energy that goes into this, any of these articles producing the work, it's to everybody's credit because your audience itself is going to be a relatively thin slice of even the academic population, right? So
yes, very much so, and that's part of why thin slicing is also. Do you know that term where somebody does research and instead of publishing the whole damn thing, it's like, oh, we'll make 9 articles out of this and release this bit and release that.
You're turning the wheel and something's coming out of the hose, right?
Yeah, that's it. It's just this little teeny bit. So I got to read 9 articles from you to actually find out what happened in your research.
This isn't Lord of the Rings. This isn't this isn't Ulysses. This isn't why. Justify for me why I need to follow all 9 of these things to get your point. Okay,
because
I hear you.
The point really is every article is 2 lines in their resume, so suddenly they have 18 more lines in their their CV, and then they can put that off to the end of the year annual report. Look, I did all these things. But
that kind of pragmatism would have probably served me well in my last role. I got to be honest. I get the impulse there. I get because it's like I'm a civil servant. I work at a university. It's like you're a civil servant. Yeah. You're a bureaucrat. If you're a professor or any kind of educator in the post-secondary thing, you work for the Ministry of Higher Education. Unless you're at a private institution, and therefore you're a bureaucrat. And bureaucrats love paperwork. I mean, it justifies the whole structure. It's like, why not? Why not? It's like, why not? put out 9 different versions of this. I'm getting paid, you know, regardless of whether I publish 6 of them or 9 of them. So, as you say, to get the resume credit, might as well publish 9, right? I get it. Totally.
And I am not throwing stones because I bought into this. Some of my earlier stuff when I was tenured,
yep,
I made extra long titles. So it'd be 3 lines on my resume, not 2 lines. And I did it. I came up with a longer title because
that is the most dope thing I've heard on this. I was hanging out, you know, I was hanging out in Kelowna the other week with my friend, and I got to meet her kids, and one of her daughters was like, "You say the word dope an awful lot." And I'm like, "That's true, but I also say awesome and radical, just not as much. So I'm not just a one-trick pony." But anyway,
you're a 3-trick pony.
At least 3.5, man. 3.5 because I'm vegan. That's where the 0.5, you know, rolls out onto it.
That's good. I like that. That's good,
man. Okay, so what did you like about what did you like about it the most? Of you know.
Now here's where I think you will really like this article.
Okay.
Because when I did my PhD, I did quantitative and qualitative stats.
Yep.
In my doctorate and stuff, right, and in my master's, and I really don't enjoy the quantitative that much because I think you're taking actual data and then turning it into a number, and then interpreting the number, and then turning that back into an interpretation. And it's like,
so you're saying that
steps. I like qualitative data better.
Well, so if I may, first of all, qualitative data and methodologies for the win, you know, FTW, right there. But then also, I'm interested. I'm compelled by your description of the preference there to quantitative. So what would your idea of quantitative measures be?
Anything with a number.
So
right, like simply, like let's do a t-test, let's do a chi-square. Like even the means and modes and all that, all the stuff you mentioned earlier, right? I see the point, and I know there's themes, and I know there's trends in it, and they make sense. I like them, but I don't want to read those in the article. I want to read the other data, the rich narrative data.
Well, and so this is where, you know, there are some methodologies that are more conducive to that, right? Like narrative inquiry is in itself its own, you know, viable and well-respected research methodology. Similarly, you know, what I did, I use a multiple case study for my doctoral thesis. It was originally meant to be a single case study, but then I didn't, you know, get adequate numbers of people involved in the first instance of data pulling, and nor did I even necessarily get the rich narratives that were needed. So I necessarily had to turn it into a multiple case study, just because the second research site, you know, was more viable in terms of getting interviews and, you know, those kinds of things. But in order for the multiple case study to work, you know, the descriptive statistics, for instance, the demographic info from the first group were there as comparators, right? You know, so even though you couldn't like say, you know, you had equivalent numbers or equivalent responses, you could at least say, by thin slicing, I'm sorry, but you could at least say that, you know, here's how, because of the descriptive stats, you know, how in aggregate this measures up against this other set, right? So.
Okay. So they had good stuff, right? And I liked the way they expanded past participant counts and feedback surveys.
Yeah.
But they went into detail on these other ways to do assessment, and I see the value in it. And I thought it was good stuff. It's just that's not an article I want to read.
Right. Okay. So a little bit more, a little bit more focus, a little bit reining in of some of these other aspects of it.
It was a good article. It was just my least favorite read.
Well, I mean, if you're putting them in a hierarchical thing, then one of them's got to be first, and one of them's got to be last. So we like you all in different ways. We like
some of you more than others.
Just differently, and some of you are a little bit more conducive to who we are and what we're about than others, and that's just our natural preferences as professionals, academics, and as human beings. So
yeah, that's basically where it is. So that's all the articles in that in the journal.
Man, friggin' A. That's awesome, man. Like I said, I mean, I really, you know, I'm due to dip into those as I'm preparing the notes.
Cool.
And I just appreciate, you know, I think this is cool that we can actually, you know, sort of, again, with this format, we have the liberty to sort of just say, okay, let's do this. Let's look at a whole issue of a thing, and then, you know, maybe the next episode we'll get back to the COI stuff, or we may go somewhere else. Your thinking here is to kind of, as you communicated it to me, is to kind of keep going back on stuff we've already touched on and shoring it up and trying to make it more practical, more actionable. So, like you said at the very beginning here, Doug, what I like about, you know, this, you know, kind of approach on this episode, which is completely different than what we've done before, is that it is moving us towards that practical, actionable place.
Yes. Because
within each of these articles is their own set of references lists, and I mean, who knows what you're going to find? Who knows what resources, you know, you may find there. So I think as a model for what we might do with this kind of show going forward, I think we've probably achieved a pretty good amount here, bud. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I like trying new things, and if they work, they work, and if they don't, okay, they didn't work. How can we make something similar work then?
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, we've hit the hour, man. Was there anything else you wanted to add? Was there anything else you wanted to add here?
There's only one silly thing.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. I saw all the. you got a couple of silly things here, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, we recorded this. We're recording this right after March 14th, which is Pi Day. Right? 3.14, right?
Oh, no. Okay, I think I know where you're going. Okay.
Yeah, so Pi Day is a fake holiday created by math companies to sell more math. And I just find that fun. It's like Valentine's Day is a fake holiday to sell cards.
Sorry, man. And then you got this Lego thing here, which aligns really well with Carolyn's article, yeah?
Yes, and that's why I pulled it out. There's a difference, and it's all Legos, and it's like there's data, and then there's sorted, and then there's arranged, then presented visually, and then explained with a story. And that's what the narrative does. So when listeners go into the website, it'll make more sense.
We need more Lego-based infographics, Doug. I definitely need. One is not going to be enough.
Well, I will work on that.
Please do. You got to.
I'll work on that.
Okay, and then there's a picture of the person with the face down in the book and the vice kind of dealy.
Squeezing them.
Right.
And literally, Centers for Teaching and Learning helps avoid this from happening. Right? Because it's just, we'll find better ways to help you. If you go to the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I don't work at one, but they help, because this is horrible. Who wants it? This is torture.
Well, and it's like, even if you go into one of these places and you don't necessarily, it's not like you got to drink all the Kool-Aid. It's like, you know, some of the stuff is going to hit for you and some of the stuff's going to miss for you. But if you're like just going to, you know, do yourself the disservice of not even checking it out, you know, just because you're afraid of the misses, or you don't think you got time or whatever. I mean, you're missing out on, you know, the good stuff. I mean, even if it's just something that you disagree with that then puts you on to another direction, that in itself is a positive outcome from visiting the writing or the teaching center, right? So.
Yeah, and writing centers for people that need help with writing. Yeah,
and writing centers, man. I spent time in a writing center. I spent 3 years in a teaching center, 2 years in a writing center. I loved them both for equally and for different reasons. And I'm still outside of the school going, hey man, I worked at a writing center. I read at a teaching center. So maybe just don't do any of this stuff. You know, that's. Doug's been doing this stuff, so he's your aspirational model. I'm like, he's done this stuff, and like, maybe just don't do it that way.
Or maybe that's just, I think it's just temporary. I
just think the universe needed to teach me something, and I'm just like, okay. So, but the point is, mindfulness. Just go about it mindfully, go about it intentionally. Give yourself and your students, especially, the benefit of checking in with the teaching center. That's my final thought on that. You got a word for the podcast here, dude?
Word for the podcast is narrative. And the reason I use narrative is because I just love me a good narrative. And I realize it's not good English.
I love, man, I got four viable tattoos out of this episode today, Matt.
And I'm glad to help. And I have one question for the podcast.
Okay.
So for the listeners, if you could tell post-secondary educators one thing about education, what would it be?
And you're allowed to use swear words. We're not going to mind. We're not going to mind if you cuss.
Yeah, please. Yeah. That's okay. We know all the words. We've used
if you ever see the Today New Brunswick, Tomorrow the World podcast notes, I use the F-bomb every 5 words because that's normally kind of my interior consciousness. You know, it's like but I'm vegan now, so I don't do anything bad.
Oh, that's good.
I told Toba, we're past everything now, man.
Yeah,
I told Toba yesterday, the other day when we were on our Skype call. I'm just like, she's like, I don't know if I could do that. And I'm just like, don't worry, I'm not going to become one of these evangelical vegans. I'm not going to be like, hitting you over the head with a celery saying you got to do this stuff. It's just,
okay.
Fun. Yeah?
This is what I'm going to do in the show notes when you get the audio ready. I'm going to count how many times you said you were vegan, and we'll start a vegan counter.
It's at least 3. It's at least 3. And I went pretty long on, most of them. So it's just, it's a new thing in the life, and a new thing in the life for me is always.
And it helps some people. So awesome. That's great.
Awesome like a possum. Okay, so man, I've enjoyed this. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we sign off here, dude?
Other than thanks for listening, and listen in again next week. We'll do another one.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you very much. Take care, and bye for now.